Welcome to this Excel video. If you're interested in Excel and you want to take your skills to the next level, then why don't you consider one of these two courses available on Vimeo. There's one with regard to creating a strength training builder and the second with regard to building a athlete monitoring system. You can check them out now, and if you use the discount code in the description of this video, you will get a 50% discount off until the end of February 2016. Anyway, the lesson that we're going to look at today is around data validation lists, and in particular around connecting one to another. So for example, if you choose one category of exercise in the first drop-down list, then you can choose only exercises from that category in the second drop-down list. So that's the most common application certainly that I have used in some of my videos, and I'm going to quickly show you that now, and then we can move on to a different application which I've got stored up and ready to go. And so with those three exercise group names selected, click inside the name box and type X groups. Make sure you don't leave a space. You cannot have spaces in named ranges. Now what I need to do is repeat that 3 more times. And what's very important is that the names that I typed into that name box correspond exactly to the words that have been typed in this column here, which is column H. If I go to my name manager by clicking Formulas, Name Manager, what we can see is there's a table that I've set up for our example shortly, but the other 4 names here are what we just have created. The first one is our list of exercise groups, and then our 3 exercise groups themselves: complex lifts, lower body and upper body. I'm going to hide these columns just for now, just to make the example a bit more simple. If I select these 3 cells, in the data menu, choose data validation. I choose list from the allow box, and with my cursor clicked inside the source box, hit the F3 key, that works on a PC, and choose X groups. So that has now placed our drop-down list of exercise groups. What we want to show in column K is only exercises from the category selected in column J. Selecting all 3 cells, click Data Validation, List. The key to this working is the indirect function. If I click on cell J11, you'll see inside the window there that it has put $signs in front of it. We do not want that. I'm going to take the $sign away from the gap between J and 11. As we can see, upper body shows only upper body exercises. Lower body shows only lower body exercises. Complex lift shows only the complex lifts. And if I change this to upper body, this also changes. So that's what I mean by dependent drop-down boxes. Drop-down box in column K is linked to the box in column J. What I have over here on the tab called Data is a bunch of information from 3 just invented tests. We've got test 1, test 2 and test 3. I have a group of athletes, 27 athletes to be precise, and I've got test information for 3 different dates. I have labelled them pre-season 1, pre-season 2 and in-season 1. If we go to the control panel and I unhide these columns, what we'll see is that I have athletes that are in 2 different sports. I want to be able to create the circumstance where I can use the same report sheet for both of these two lists of athletes. They all train together, they do the same testing, it's just that they're from different sports. So let's get about that process, remembering what we just did for our earlier example. If I select these two sports, and I simply type sports in the name box, hockey and rugby. If I go over to this cell here, this is cell I4 on the data page. To get started, I'm going to do something quite simple. Choose list, hit the F3 key, double click on sports and say OK. Now I can choose hockey from that list. I can now use the indirect function to pull up only the hockey names in our list. Index is the formula that I use almost all the time for looking things up, but the trick is the next part. What do I want to look up? I want to look up a list that has been determined by the selection in this cell. I'm going to type F4. Which item do I want to look up? Well, I've put some numbers just to the left of the data, which is going to help us with that. This is going to look up the first name in the hockey list. And as I drag it down, because that H9 is not locked in, there are no dollar signs, I can pull through just the hockey names. If I change this to rugby, I get just the rugby names. Now I don't like those errors, so I'm going to wrap if error around the outside. And so now those errors are gone. And everything still works as it should. So if I want to pull out information from this data table now, it should be really easy and it should stay very dynamic. Ideally, what I'd like to do is make this even more dynamic and allow users to select which test periods they want to compare with each other. So I know that we've got pre-season 1, pre-season 2, and in-season 1. So we can make a little list for that. I'm going to do it over here. With those cells selected, click inside the name box and type test periods. And across all of these columns here, J to O, I'm going to place that as a drop-down list. So once again, the F3 key is very helpful. So what we're trying to do now is for our rugby players is do a report that presents pre-season 1 and pre-season 2's data next to each other for the 3 tests. We know that there's only one test row per athlete. That makes it very easy to extract information. I can use the Sumifs function or the AverageIfs function equally easily in this circumstance. They both have their problems. This one provides zeros and this one provides errors. We'll see that in a second, and I can explain that further when it appears. AverageIfs is a fantastic equation that allows you to use criteria to extract information from a large data table. This table on the left here is called an Excel table. And the table's name I've written in cell A3, it's called TBL athlete data. So as I start typing that, TBL athlete data appears on the list. What we have to present in this first variable is which range is being averaged. In this particular case, it's test 1. Now we have to enter our criteria in much the same way. Our criteria is also in the athlete data sheet. Our first criteria is a test label. And where is our label? It is in this cell here. If I lock that row number, then later on we can drag this formula across. Second criteria is name. We want to only extract the name of the athlete in this particular row. Now to get to that name, it's a little bit tricky now because our formula tip and our formula itself has expanded over the top of the cell. If I just click a couple of cells below, you can see the dash lines circling around the outside of the cell. I can use my arrow keys to go up and select the cell that I want. This time I need to lock the column number. So if I hit enter, it tells us 135. And we can do a little quick audit just to check that Lisa Monroe for pre-season 1 got 135 for the first test, which we can see is true. So with a bit of confidence now, I can double click and send down. As you can see, we use an average if. We have errors appearing for these last 6 rows. If I had used Sumifs, which I'll just type over the top, that would present them as zeros, because as far as the formula is concerned, there's no numbers that match the criteria, so it's going to give us 0. In the case of average, what it's doing is dividing everything by a count. What is the total and what is the count? Divide one by the other and you get a score. In the case of average, if it can't find a denominator, it produces an error. This table on the left here is using table referencing, and that's a little bit of a problem because if I try and drag this across, what we'll see if we look inside the formula bar is that most of the fields have shuffled across as we've dragged it, and we do not want that. So we have to do a little bit of tidying up of our formula before we can drag it across. So one of the quirks of Excel tables is this process is a little bit time consuming. If I double click and send that down first and drag it across, what we can see is that the result has updated. And as I drag it across one further cell to the right, everything still holds other than the fact that we just have to change this to test 2. And something that's really great about Excel 2013 is that as we're making these formula edits, we can see the changes updating in the table. And it's quite nice to know that we're on track because we can see the coloured boxes are identifying the different parts of the formula. Double click and send it down, drag it across, send it down, one more time, drag it across, edit the test, drag it to the right, double click to send it down. And so we now have a little grid here that's quite dynamic. We can select the group of athletes that we want and everything is going to update. I can select any of the 2 tests that I like. It doesn't always have to be season 1 and season 2 because it's dynamic, the formula is going to adjust. If I go back to my control panel sheet and I look at my injured athletes, don't have a list yet of injured athletes, so let's make one. Let's put 3 hockey players and 5 rugby players in that list. Select those names, into the name manager, injured. Now it's okay that Gemma Jones is already in the hockey list, it doesn't matter. I need to go to the name manager and extend the range for the sports name. At the moment you can see it's only those 2. We want to expand it, so I can either use the finder to just drag the cells, or I could have typed directly in this refers to box. Say yes to that question. We should now be able to go back to the sheet and choose injured, and only those injured names appear. Now if you've chosen AverageIfs, let's do it here. You can see that we've both got zeros and errors now as a result of the fact that there's no athletes from rows 9 down to 20 at the moment. You can solve this in a bunch of different ways, and I'm going to show you 3 different ways to solve it. First one, conditional formatting. By selecting the entire table, create a new rule and choose errors and format the font to be white. So now we've got rid of the errors, and it wouldn't matter where the errors occurred. I could also simply say if the value is equal to 0, then also format that white. And so that's now made that table look a little bit tidier. I'm going to undo that last change, simply because I don't want to spoil the thunder for what else I'm going to show you. The second option we've already done, and that is putting if error in front. That works if you've chosen AverageIf or AverageIfs. The option that I do want to show you involves a counter. I want to count how many values there are in the list that I've selected here. So the injured list has 8, the hockey list has 13, rugby list has 14. So this is a counter. I've just made the font a little bit lighter because I want to make it a little bit inconspicuous and not clutter up our report. So we've got that number here. So I'm going to choose column J as the place that I can demonstrate this. This is row 1 of our table. So if I click on my counter, which is in column H, and I just lock it with column number with a $sign, if that is greater than our counter, then show me nothing. Otherwise, run the formula as normal. Double click, send that down, and now those zeros disappear. And so if I copied that and did it on the next one as well, this would be the process that you would go through. So part of the goal of this video was to talk about dependent drop-down boxes, and I've only done that a little bit, so I want to follow up this last little part now on that. At the moment we've got a perfect data set, i.e. there's always a result, and we've got 3 test dates where everyone was tested. What say, for the rugby team, that this was actually pre-season 3 and not in season 1. This now means that columns K and M are giving us zeros, and we can't choose preseason 3 from this list. So let's go to the control panel sheet. This is now our test periods for hockey. And these are our test periods for rugby. I've complicated it a bit with this injured example, but let's not worry about that for now. Let's follow through with this particular example. I need to rename this. In the name manager, I can do that. So instead of being called test periods, I click edit and I can give it a new name. Test periods hockey. Check that it's still going for the right cells, which it is. Click OK. Call the second one test periods rugby and select those three. Quick check, everything looks like it's okay. So now what I want is for these drop down boxes to be linked to whichever sport is selected here. And that might be a little bit trickier than our previous exercise and groups example. The ampersand symbol joins together text strings. For example, an ampersand will join these two things together into one cell. So what I want is this to be joined with whatever is selected in this cell, because that's the name of our list. We've got a list called Test Periods Rugby. So that's effectively what we have to do inside the data validation formula setting. So I'm going to reselect these 6 cells in the data validation, delete what was previously there and type indirect inside quotes, manually type test periods, put the ampersand in, and now click on cell I4. As we close our brackets, we should now be okay. So we've got pre-season 3, pre-season 2, perfectly working as they should. If we change to hockey, pre-season 1, in season 1 works fine, because all that's happening is that this formula is looking at the cell for its criteria and this cell for its other criteria. So as long as they match up, it's going to find a number. Otherwise, it's going to give you an error. So we covered a few different concepts here, but all linked towards trying to create data reports that are dynamic. So this video covered a few concepts, most notably data validation lists and the indirect function. But what I'm trying to do is demonstrate that if you can string 3 or 4 little tricks together, you can make reports that are quite interesting to work with.